What's up guys, Bao with Designcraft Workshop here, and in this video I'm going to show you how I built this torsion box Outfeed assembly table with tons of storage, and also a downdraft table with bench dog holes for bench dog accessories, plus integrated tracks for track clamps. Let's do it. If you haven't yet, click that subscribe button. Thanks. Alright, so before we continue with the actual build of the torsion box and the base, I'm going to go over the idea behind my setup on the interior side of the torsion box and how it differs a little bit from traditional torsion box setups. With the internal grid system, there's no real one way to do it. I've seen people have done it this way we're here, which is to stagger the dividers. And I've also have seen torsion box where the dividers are straight and they're lined up. So there's no real way for you to do this. I'm doing it staggered because I feel like doing it staggered this way will add a little bit more rigidity into the torsion box. It's not scientifically proven, but whatever. I'm just going to do it that way because I feel like it's a little bit more rigid. The grid system is what gives the torsion box its strength, its rigidity, its flatness, and normally what you would see is the entire interior component of the torsion box filled with this grid system. So how I modified the torsion box is, instead of doing the entire interior as a grid system, I went ahead and placed some drawers inside the grid system so it doesn't affect the flatness and rigidity of the torsion box, because you would already have these gaps when you're doing a grid system anyway. So I just took advantage of that space and placed in some drawers, 4 drawers you see here. And since most of the torsion box has already been filled in with the grid system, I went ahead and used portion of the what would be a grid system and placed in a downdraft table. All right, so now that I went over the entire detail of the interior components, let's go ahead and build this thing. Like all other projects, I like to break down my sheet goods into manageable parts. That way, whenever I'm cutting them at the table saw, it's a lot safer. I'm going to cut out the parts for the base as well as the cabinet boxes first. I'll worry about the drawers and the top a little bit later. If you don't have a track saw, you can always use a straight edge guide with a circular saw. It'll work exactly the same way. With all the parts cut out to the rough dimensions on the track saw, I'll go ahead and cut them to the final dimensions on the table saw. Each of the legs will consist of 4 sheets of plywood that will be glued together. The final dimensions for the post will be approximately 3 by 3. I know that in the video you see here, it might be a little bit thicker than 3 by 3. It's actually 4 by 3. This dimension will be a little bit different compared to the plans, so just know that what you're seeing here is a little bit different. With the glue dried, I'll go ahead and clean up the edges a bit on my table saw. With the legs completed, I'll go ahead and focus on getting the stretchers cut down to the right length. It's going to be a total of 4 short stretchers and then 3 long stretchers. I'll then sand everything down to 120 grit before assembling the base. To assemble the base, I'm going to attach the long stretcher piece to my legs with glue and pin nails to hold it in place. After that, I'll drive in some screws. You'll notice that one of the base will have 2 long stretcher pieces, one on top and the other on the bottom, while the other side of the base will only have 1 long stretcher piece at the bottom. This is so I can take full advantage of the entire height of that storage area. You'll see what I'm talking about later. I'm adding a toe kick to the bottom of the table by attaching the bottom stretcher 2 inches above the ground. With the longer sides assembled, I'll attach the shorter stretcher pieces to connect both sides together. I'm driving in 2-inch screws into the edge of the plywood, which usually isn't ideal. So to help this connection, I'm going to drive in a 3-inch screw right down the middle. Now the glue should be enough to hold this thing together, but I just want to be on the safe side. A little tip when you're working in tight areas is to drive in the screws to their piece first. That way it'll free up your hands to hold up the workpiece instead of the screw so that you can secure it into place. When attaching the perpendicular braces for my base, I'm making sure to have at least 2 pieces of brace sit directly under my plywood boxes. The spacing will depend on how you're going to arrange your store cabinets. I'm using pin nails and then driving in some screws to secure these braces in place. Now with the base complete, I'll focus on making the boxes for the storage area. I'm not going to use any fancy joinery on these boxes or my drawers. It's simply butt joints with glue and screws. One thing to note is that the side panels as well as the bottom and the back panel are complete sheets of plywood. The tops, I'm only using 2 strips, something that you typically see in cabinet making for countertops. This is going to provide plenty of strength for the cabinet boxes. I didn't mention this, but I'm using some scrap pieces I found in the shop, just like this back panel. The plans do show that you can use a 1/2-inch sheet, only because I'm trying to keep it really simple on the plans and not have you buy so many different sheets of plywood. With the storage boxes in place, I'll secure them into the base using screws. To level the base, I'm going to use these adjustable feet. You don't have to use these, you can always use shims, but I find that these adjustable feet are a lot quicker to get things nice and leveled. And when making a torsion box assembly table or Outfeed table, you want to make sure that your base is completely flat and level. And this is important because the torsion box itself will be assembled directly on the base. So you want to make sure that everything is perfect before you go and assemble the torsion box. To level out the base, I'm using this really long level. I would say you want to get at minimum a 3-foot level for this. The longer the level, the more accurate the reading will be. Alright, so I got the leveling feet installed on all 4 corners. My one concern about using the leveling feet is that it would introduce racking into the base. But as you can see, I'm pushing on this with all my weight, and the actual base is moving before it even racks. So things are looking really solid, which is what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. One thing I did forget is my cabinets, my carcass here. I need to push it back 3/4 of an inch to have the fronts later on flush with the face of this post, the face of my legs here. So I'm going to remove the screws on the sides of each panel that connects the carcass to the legs, and I'm going to push it back 3/4 of an inch, and that way the fronts will be nice and flush. Now that I got that fixed, I'll add the bottom layer of the torsion box and connect it directly to the base using some screws. All right, so I have the bottom layer here for the torsion box attached onto the base. I'll go ahead and start the interior grid by locating the back side panel as well as the two side panels, and then I'll go ahead and start the grid out. The torsion box assembly could be done in many ways. I think the simplest way is just using pin nails as well as glue. I've seen other torsion boxes where pocket holes are used, and you can use that if you want to, but you don't really have to. You don't have to spend the extra money buying a pocket jig, using pocket screws. I think the combination of glue, pin nails, and clamps will work just fine. At the corners, I'm going to use some corner clamps to keep everything squared. If you don't have corner clamps, I do recommend that you buy it for your shop. You don't have to buy the ones that I'm using here, but they are a very useful tool. When I was assembling the torsion box, I didn't really have a clear dimension laid out. What I did was I marked the center of the torsion box and glued in my first interior grid panel. And from there, I just divided the area on the top of the box in half and created the grid system based off of that dimension. When laying out the entire grid system, I'm going to use a spacer in between the dividers of the grid. That way the grid will be consistent throughout. And I'm attaching them with glue and pin nails. Nice and simple. I use the same method for the drawers that are integrated into the torsion box grid, except that these dividers will be spaced out a little bit wider so that I can give the drawers a little bit more space. With the grid system completed, I'll work on the parts for my drawers. The first set of drawers that I'll make are the ones that are integrated into the torsion box grid. These drawers aren't going to have your typical soft close sliders that I'll use for the other drawers in the cabinet box, mainly because this area I'm not putting anything too heavy, and I just wanted to maximize the space a little bit more. Again, with these drawers, I'm just using butt joints with glue and pin nails, and pretty much any scrap that I can find, just like the bottoms of these boxes. To install my makeshift slides, I'm placing a 1/4 inch strip of plywood as a spacer directly below the lower runner. Then I'll secure it in place with glue and pin nails. For the top portion of the slides, I'm going to use the actual runner that I'll be installing onto the drawer as a spacer to locate the top portion of the slide. And the piece of paper you see there provides a small enough gap so that the runner can freely move back and forth. With my makeshift slides installed on both sides, I'm using the same 1/4 inch spacers to lift up the drawers. With the drawers in place, I'll attach the runners to the drawers with glue and pin nails. And here's how it works. For the downdraft area, I'm using this port that I bought on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description down below if you want to pick one up yourself. So I just traced the interior diameter. I'll drill a few holes so that I can use my jigsaw to cut out the oval. Even with the holes cut out, the jigsaw was a little bit too big to make the turn, so it wasn't as nice as I wanted it to be. So after cutting out the shape, I went back with a sander to smooth out everything. I also took this time to sand the entire top edge of all of my dividers and the grid. That way it'll remove any glue residue that will prevent the top from sitting flat on the grid. After sanding everything down, I vacuumed the interior cavity before applying caulking to the seams. I'm applying caulking only to the downdraft area. This will help seal everything up so that there won't be any air leakage. To install the baffles into the downdraft table, I marked the angles where I wanted the baffles to sit, and then I placed a small strip of plywood behind that marking. This will allow the baffles to be pinned into place using pin nails. And then I'll apply some caulking to seal the baffles and wipe the excess off. I'll add some caulking on the inner ring of the dashboard to seal it off. And then I'll secure it on the underside of the downdraft table with some screws. Now I can work on the actual top of the torsion box. Here I'm marking the area for the downdraft table. The entire top will be removable, but I want to be able to remove just the downdraft area if I ever do have anything drop into the cavity. To make this cut, I'll be using the track saw. You can use a jigsaw with a guide as well, but I find that a track saw is going to give me a cleaner cut. I'm going to set aside the top for a moment and go back to the drawers that I just finished. I need to make the drawer fronts for those drawers that I integrated into the grid. These are just 1/2-inch plywood sheets that I cut up. And to integrate the drawer pulls, I'm creating a small bevel at the bottom edge of the drawer front. That way there's no hardware that's sticking out that could catch up on my apron or shirt. I feel like this is the safest way, especially when I'm working around the Outfeed table, moving back and forth between tools. I just don't want anything to get caught. And with the drawer fronts installed, I can line up the top of my torsion box to the top edge of the drawer front, so everything will be flush. I can then go ahead and secure the top into place by pre-drilling and countersinking some screws directly into the torsion box. With the top in place, I'll lay out the lines for my tracks. The goal was to hopefully not jeopardize the top of the torsion box. In the end, I didn't want to place the grid everywhere, and also I didn't want to be in a situation where there was not enough tracks for whatever clamping scenario that I needed. In the end, I felt like the way that I laid it out, it made sense for me. You don't have to follow exactly how I laid out my grid system or track system. You can feel free to add more or not add the same amount. It's really up to you and what you need. I'll make the tracks with a dovetail bit. It's similar to the micro jigs match fit system, but at that time I didn't have any of those clamps. I had these Bessie track clamps that typically works with aluminum tracks, and I wanted to utilize those clamps for my Outfeed assembly table. The only thing is the Bessie clamps are a little bit thicker, so I had to do 2 passes with my router. The first pass was directly over the line that I made on the top, and then I moved my fence over about 1/8 of an inch to get the second pass, and that gap will be perfect for the track clamps. The tricky part is if you make the tracks too wide, the Bessie clamps won't bite into the wood, so those track clamps will lift out of the groove and you won't be able to use them. But if you do have the match fit system, then this is a pretty good way to integrate the match fit into this top. Once all the tracks were made, I went ahead and sanded everything down with 180 grit sandpaper. I'm using a 3/4 inch Forstner bit to create the downdraft holes. I'm using 3/4 of an inch because the bench dog accessories that I have are 3/4 of an inch, and they'll fit perfectly in these holes. The bench dog accessories will allow me to add stops for hand planing or any hand tool work that I need to do, which I hope to do more of next year. And also I'll be able to use bench dog cookies, which would help with the finishing process. Now I can make the hole for my dust collection hose. I'm using a 5-inch hole saw. My dust collection hose is 4-inch. So there's just enough wiggle room for the hose to fit through. Then I'll secure the hose to the dust port for my downdraft table with metal duct tape. And then I'll connect the opposite side to my main dust collection system just to test it out. So the biggest fear that I had for this design actually came true. The downdraft location is the furthest point from my dust collection system. So being that it is the furthest point, it's not getting a lot of CFM to the table here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect the downdraft location to my shop vac with this separator here. And by doing this, the suction is a lot better for the downdraft area. So what I will do is I will keep this setup close by. I have another workbench here that I'm going to modify later on, and I'll add some space for this setup. So you are going to build one with a downdraft table. Consider where your dust collection system is located and how far down the line the downdraft table will sit. That's going to play a role in how well the suction is while you're using it. Just keep in mind the downdraft is optional. You don't have to do it if you don't want to. You could simply just add more grids underneath, and you can continue the drawers all the way here, or you can just use the top as a bench dog system with the holes. So you have many options here that you can kind of, alter and make your own for your own shop. That's the small little caveat that I wanted to kind of address here if you guys are going to build one yourself. So now that that's done, I'll go ahead and start doing the drawers and the dividers for the storage area underneath. And now once again, I'm breaking down more plywood. It's a lot of plywood for this project. Then I can go ahead and assemble all my drawers using 1/2-inch plywood. It's pretty simple, like I said before, nothing too fancy about it. The difference between these drawers and the drawers that are integrated into the grid system is that these drawers will receive typical soft closing drawer slides. Since these drawers will be holding a lot more weight, these drawer slides will handle it perfectly. Like with all my builds, I have the link for all of the products down in the description below. For one of the drawers, I forgot to make a cutout for the dust port and the dust hose. So I'll use the table saw to just cut out that tiny area and then fill the sides back up with plywood. Now all the drawers are done. I don't really like to make drawers. The final step is to add on the drawer fronts and the drawer pulls. To install the fronts, I'll just apply some glue and pin nail them in place. I'm trying to pin nail these into the side of the box instead of the front. That way the nails won't stick out in the back. These pulls are going to be really simple. I'm just creating two 45-degree angles on a piece of plywood, and then I'm going to rip that in half. I'll break down the edges with a little bit of hand sanding and secure them onto the drawer fronts using glue and pin nails. And with those final touches, this project is done. I don't know why I waited this long to create an Outfeed table. I really think that after building one, it should be one of the first tables you build for your shop. It's going to make cutting things on your table saw a lot safer. You're not going to have pieces fall over that are not supported on the other side. Really, do yourself a favor and make an Outfeed table as one of your first projects for your workshop. That is it for this video. I hope that you are able to take what I've learned, and if you are going to build an Outfeed table, you are able to modify it to whatever you need in your shop. If you want to build this exact assembly table, I do have plans for this build in the description down below. Check it out, let me know what you think. I'm super excited about having an Outfeed table that's nice and solid for me to not only use it as an Outfeed table, but also an assembly table. It's going to allow me to safely rip long pieces and not have the piece fall over the other side of the table saw. That's where I'm going to leave the video. If you did like it, give me that thumbs up, click the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so you can be notified whenever I upload a new video. And let me know what you think in the comments down below. Are you going to build this one yourself? What would you have done differently? What will you change? And let me know if you think my design sucks. And until next time, this has been Bao with Design Craft Workshop. See ya. If you like this video, hit that like button and definitely subscribe. Thanks.